On behalf of the People's Progressive Party, I wish to congratulate President-elect Trump for the historic achievement that he has succeeded in achieving. He is the second U.S. president in the entire history of the United States of America who has come back to serve a non-consecutive term. And I think it's incumbent on the People's Progressive Party, but all of Guyana, to congratulate him. The United States, the people in the United States, over 72 million of them have spoken. And we have to respect their wishes. They have chosen their leader. And we are looking forward to working with his administration. We had a good working relationship with his administration in the past, and we're looking forward to continuing that relationship and growing it. We believe that the United States of America is a very close partner of Guyana, and therefore we have to work to build that partnership continuously. We would also work with his administration to debunk a lot of the lies being peddled by some forces, including the opposition. For the past several years, they have been meeting U.S. government officials and have been telling a bunch of lies to them. Almost every mission that comes to Guyana from the United States of America, they have a standard mantra. The PPP is racist, the PPP is corrupt, the PPP is incompetent, the PPP squanders oil money, and the PPP doesn't like the United States of America. We are in bed with the Chinese. This is their standard narrative. Every mission that comes to Guyana, I can predict what they will say to them. And of course, the facts are very different. And we have also been meeting with those officials to set the record straight. So I think those officials are pretty much aware of the transgressions, because what I say here at the press conference, we also speak to them about this. The transgressions on procurement and the systemic improvements that we have made to enhance the procurement in Guyana. And people are very much, particularly international organizations and our bilateral partners, they want to see that the system is a fair one for their investors too. And right now, a fair system can only operate if it's transparent and people have information. And I've just given you one example right here at this press conference where on the NPTAB website, if you look at the 5 years of procurement on the APNU, you will see not a single bit of information as is required by law, the Procurement Act of Guyana. The Procurement Act of Guyana says that after a contract has been awarded within a specified time period, the administration has to put on the website the nature of the contract, the name of the contractor, the quantum of money for the award, that is the contract price, and the procurement method, among other fields that they have to fill in on that that in the format that is on the website. So you can know exactly who got the contract, what was the price of the contract, and the procurement method used, whether it's sole sourcing or open competitive tender or restrictive tender. That was absent for the entire period on the APNU. Right now, from September of 2021 to now, every contract procured through MPTAB is on that site with the required information. So these are the sorts of things that we use when they go with their shrill voices there and they're lying through their teeth. Then we have to use real evidence to show the major improvements in the system. And we're looking forward to continue to debunk all the lies, particularly with the new administration that will take office in January of next year in the United States of America. And we will point out, for example, another example has been this abuse of the system by people like Burke and the others, constantly go in to the law enforcement authorities that someone wants to kill him from the government of Guyana. Now, every Guyanese knows that he is a lunatic to even suggest that nobody has any harmful desire in relation to him. But he does this routinely, make these false reports and mislead the authorities there. We're looking forward to much more of that information flowing about his transgressions here, his criminal acts here. And I'm not speaking of the criticism of the government of Guyana or his racist rant from time to time. I'm speaking about the real criminal acts that he's been perpetrating on many innocent Guyanese, the act of extortion for money. And a lot of people will find out more about him. So, as I said before, we are looking forward to working with the new administration in the United States of America. The U.S. has, in spite of all the rhetoric you see, they've had their elections. It was conducted peacefully, and there is going to be a peaceful transfer of power. And that is very commendable in a world in which you have significant turmoil. So we congratulate not just the Trump regime, but the American people. Next week, that is Monday, the Conference of Parties would start their negotiations, the annual COP. So it's the 29th COP. We will be represented there in Azerbaijan, and we intend to take some very strong positions which are not strange or unknown to the Guyanese public, because we have been speaking of these positions for quite a while now, but they will be in support of the developing countries, particularly vulnerable countries in the Caribbean. We will be pressing for more financial aid to these countries for adaptation and also mitigation. It's deemed a conference of parties about financing. That's COP29. And so I guess it will be judged on how it moves that needle further to the right. And so we intend to take a strong position. I'm not going to today, because I can talk for a long time on this today, I'm not going to get bogged down in this issue here now, just to say that we will be there and we will be very, very supportive of those countries that are looking forward to getting more help to adapt to climate change. I think it's clear to everyone now what is at stake. The world is on a trajectory at current policy levels in the country, at current policy, to achieve, to get to maybe about 3.1 degrees Celsius rise above pre-industrial level at current policies. If we fully implement all the pledges made on the Paris Agreement, all the pledges made, fully implemented, we will only achieve a 2.6 degrees rise above pre-industrial levels. That is of concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. What is required to avoid catastrophic change is a 1.5 degree rise above pre-industrial level. So clearly you can see, even with the pledges, we're way off target. And without additional pledges now, we're at current policy level, we're at over 3 degrees Celsius rise above pre-industrial level, which will have we're passing the point, or the tipping point. And already you've seen this in some parts of the world. Large, in the polar region, the ice sheets are melting. There are already changes in ocean currents. And these could have devastating, catastrophic consequences for the world, and particularly the developing world, which has limited capacity to adapt to those changes. So it's a very dangerous time for the world. I don't know, many of you didn't miss much at the last press conference held by the AFC. But for me, it was a total clown show. For a while now, I've been saying that some tough questions should be asked of these individuals, the Pattersons, Nigel Hughes, his wife, Cathy Hughes, Ramjatan. That's the entire party goes to these press conferences. Beverly Alert, the entire party will go to the press conference. The whole leadership, they all go in a group. And they all have significant baggage. And they don't have a healthy track record. And they go to these press conferences with these notes that are prepared, that sound, the ideas in the notes sound lofty, they sound erudite, they sound as though they're sensible. But then when you get to the point of questioning these individuals about their track record and about the very ideas that they're propagating, then everything falls apart. And the last press conference was a manifestation of that. So Nigel Hughes has refused to apologize for the AFC's role in trying to rig the last elections. He couldn't find a single thing to apologize for. He wanted specifics as to what he should apologize for. Well, we can find 100 specific things for which they should apologize for. But the key issue was their role in trying to steal the elections and thwart the will of the people of the country. If he doesn't see that as egregiously wrong, if he doesn't see stealing elections as something that is reprehensible, if he doesn't see this as unconstitutional or behavior to condemn, then he is not fit to lead a political party, because it's a party that is based on deception and lies. And all his talk about decency in politics is just that talk. So he wants to know what specifically he should apologize for. Well, you tried to steal the elections. You were out there, your party, and the same people who were surrounded him at the press conference were there out there 4 years ago at press conferences and at every forum, arguing that they won the elections and they were pushing an early swearing in of President Granger for a second term. They fabricated a bunch of lies to support the stealing of the elections. They spoke of dead people voting, and they had a list of dead people voting that until today can't be verified. They had a list of people who they claim had left the country and that others impersonated them at the polling place. And until now, that list can't be verified. In fact, a few names that they put out at the election, at their recount, those people showed up and say, I'm here, I'm still in Mahaica, Helena Mahaica, I'm still in Essequibo Coast at Reliance. Here, I'm living here, I never left the country. They said they migrated permanently, and that the immigration officer, some immigration officer told them that these people had migrated. We recall that. They had a list of about 100 persons. That all, we went and found the people and put them on camera. They did that. If you want specific things for which you should apologize, those lies that you should apologize for. So as I said before, Nigel Hughes will refuse to do so because they were part of the plot to steal the election. The AFC was integrally part of it. So that's why today he finds it very hard to answer the question whether he saw the SOPs or not. Remember Norton, in my conversation, I met him at a social event, and he said he has the SOPs, but he has them locked away. He saw them. He has them locked away in the dungeon at Congress Place. So he never produced them. The documents that someone should have asked Nigel Hughes, did he see the GCOM SOPs that were produced in court? Did he see the ones that the PPP put up on its website 3-4 days after the elections that were exact replica of, well, not a replica, but was an exact match to those that GCOM submitted to the court, because they were done on the same document, you know, and shared with all of the political parties, that had the signature of the PNC's polling agents and AFC polling agents too on these. Did he see those? What did he think about those that were submitted by GCOM? So it's a dishonest policy of the AFC to go around pretending to be decent. They're riggers, just like the PNC. And someone takes offense at saying it's in their DNA. It is in the PNC's DNA. They've sought this for historically. They've always tried to rig elections. I'm not talking about supporters. I'm talking about the leadership of the PNC. They've always done this. Not talking about their ordinary people. Most of their supporters were misled. They were told by these same riggers that they won the elections, and they wanted to believe them. One of our candidates to for local government elections in Georgetown, I spoke with her. She was a councillor for the APNU in the city council in the past. And she told me that people believed this. She brought some people to say to me when they actually believed that they won the elections, because they couldn't believe that their own leaders would lie that much to them. And it is this lie that's harming them on the ground now. They lied to their supporters, and also they neglected everyone. And when you neglect people, you can't come back now around elections and tell them that you love them, because they remember when you had power that you neglected them totally. I'm not speaking about sometimes people are busy, public officials, and they can't meet everyone. I'm talking about turning their nose up at ordinary people. And you see it, the elitism there. So Nigel Hughes was not being clever. He was not being clever when he tried to engage the reporter in a back and forth about what specifically should I be apologizing for. He was being disingenuous. He was trying to divert attention from the elephant in the room that was just next to him, which is them rigging or attempting to steal the 2020 elections by trying to get into, oh, what specifically should I be apologizing for? For stealing the elections, for attempting to steal elections. If you can't find it in your heart to come clean with the Guyanese public now, how could you advocate decency in politics? And then the next person to speak was Ramjatan. So I actually found this like unbelievable that they have to be very disrespectful of all of us, all Guyanese, to think that we will buy the stupid explanations that they give. So someone asked about the Russians' involvement in the last elections. And this is what Ramjatan said. It shocked me when they sent it to me. He said, please, there were 4 Russians who were speaking to Bharrat Jagdeo in Russian at the Marriott Hotel. And based on what the police and the special branch indicated, that they were speaking certain things that they suspect had to do with elections. Now, first of all, I never spoke with anyone in Russian or with Russians in Russian at the Marriott. That's the first point. Secondly, if I was going to speak to someone, Russians, about helping us to rig an election, which is manual now, you have to just go in and vote with an X and then they count it. It's not like electronic voting. So they can't hack the system. It's a manual system. You'd have to hack every person's hand to vote, right? But it's a manual system. But assuming there was a conspiracy to do this, would I be doing it in the lobby of a hotel? And then thirdly, I want to know from the people in special branch, if I was speaking in Russian, which one of them understood Russian? I'm still trying to find out from the Commissioner of Police who in special branch was so proficient in Russian that they told Ramjatan I was speaking some things about elections. Because it's not like the word is close, you know. Elections is Weber in Russian. It's different things. It's not like close language like Spanish. You may think it's very close. They're very, very different. But the special branch told him that I was speaking some things about election. It goes on, the nonsense goes on. It's a long rant by Ramjatan. But he then says, oh, I wasn't too certain, so I deported them for talking to Jagdeo. That's the end of it, and that's the end of the matter. I deported them. This is a party that is trying to get in, that was in government, that had control over the parliament for nearly 10 years. 10 years from 2011 to 2020. They had control over the parliament. This is a party that has been around for how many? 19 years now, that don't have a plan. And is seeking to get back into power, and this party one of its leaders, in fact, a top leader, the last presidential candidate, will give a stupid explanation like this. They didn't put this in the dossier that they sent up to Washington. They didn't even put about me speaking in Russian to Russians. What they said there in the dossier that Gustavo Arnavat, who was a naturalized American of Cuban origin, was here in Guyana and was seen speaking. Well, they didn't even say he was seen speaking with me, but I suspect that they saw the gentleman come to Freedom House because they were spying from us with this camera here that they have installed out there. They installed the camera. So they saw everyone who came in that election period just before election here. So I asked this gentleman to come to Ghana. They were representing us in Washington for the lobbying for Mercury that we paid for with our money, with the party's money, not government money like they did, because they were doing the same thing. They were lying to the US administration about us. So we had to get a lobbying firm to correct all the lies they were telling. Several of our people went up to meet with people pre-election. I met with, personally I met with members of Congress, I met with representatives in the White House, from the White House, etc. So this was an American firm, lobbying firm that everyone knew of. The gentleman was here, but the person, they used this Cuban thing that he was American, naturalized American of Cuban origin, to basically say, oh, somehow maybe communist. Now, if they knew that who Gustavo was the US government representative at the Inter-American Development Bank. He was chosen by President Obama. Gustavo was chosen by President Obama. You had to get approval, I think, from the White House to hold a position there. So they had it all wrong, but they were panicked. Imagine they were in government and they were scared of their own shadow. and they had control over the police, the army. They were spying on us. I dealt with the planting of special branch in my office. That was the mood. They were not very comfortable because they knew that the signs were there, that they were going to lose the elections, and they were panicked. So all the bravado that they were going on with, and even now continue to say, oh, they will win the elections, we saw a healthy demonstration of that. But behind the scenes, they were scared. They were spying on us. So everyone I spoke with became automatically a Russian. And so they deported 4 maybe unsuspecting persons who came in here, I don't know for what reason, and they just picked them up and sent them off this Ramjatan. That might be malfeasance in public office. But the foolishness of it to say I was speaking to the people in Russian. And that's why, and the special branch told him that we were talking something about election. They weren't even sure what it was. How could you be so silly? And then the partisan, I think, had to be schooled by a reporter about what constitutes a removal from the voters list. Now this is someone who spoke for about, I don't know, 30 minutes about GCOM and continuous, and about how you can remove people's name from the list through a house-to-house registration without violating their constitutional right. And the reporter pointed out that there is a ruling by the Chief Justice. And what was the context of the ruling? It was when the Granger illegally appointed Patterson, and after our case at the CCJ, he was removed. But he took a decision then when he was there, the GCOM took a decision to do house-to-house registration, because we believe they wanted to drop large numbers of people from the list, the voters list, close to the elections, as happened in 1990, when large numbers were not on the list, and we could not go to the elections in 1990. So they got a 2 years extension to 1992, because the last election before that was held in 1985, and we were supposed to go to elections in 1990. But because the list was in such a bad state, they got a 2 years extension in office. Illegal, unconstitutional, but they remained in office for 2 additional years. People don't even know that history sometimes. So they remember this, you know, like when a dog sucks egg, right? They remember it. It becomes part of their DNA too. So that was the motive. But the context was using this decision of the Patterson, who was there, that is retired Justice Patterson, who was GCOM, not Sticky Finger Patterson. Lowenfield then tried to do a house-to-house, to launch a house-to-house registration. The same thing that Patterson was advocating for in the press conference. And then we went to the court. And the court ruled that the house-to-house registration would effectively create a new list, basically, and drop all of the people from the old list. And since I'm paraphrasing here, but since you have a system of continuous registration, you can't do that. It would violate their constitutional right, because they didn't deal with one issue. which was the removal in the constitutional reform of the early 2000s. There were 3 criteria to be on the list: residency, or to register people. Residency, Guyanese, and 18 years and over. We dropped the residency requirement. So thereafter, it became unconstitutional to remove a person from a list if they're not resident in the country. And all the parties agreed to it. You had to have 2/3 support for this in the parliament for it to pass. Every party agreed to drop the residency requirement. So then we are moving now to continuous registration. So his argument that, oh, you could potentially have more people on the list than you have people living in the country. But many countries in the Caribbean, they have that situation. Many countries in the Caribbean, they have, like, the voters list could be 98% of the population. And that's including children. Because you can't remove the people from the list, but they can't vote from abroad. They have to come back home and vote. So they're on the list, but they cannot vote. So the reporter was trying to say to him, but we moved away from that. There is a system of continuous registration. She was schooling him. And a continuous registration. It was in that context, the new house-to-house registration, that the Chief Justice ruled that it will be unconstitutional to remove people's name from the voters list. So, it's shocking. It's shocking. And I think maybe Nigel Hughes knew this. That's why he passed it to Patterson to make a fool of himself. I think he did it deliberately. It's shocking that someone would not know this. And so now I see them circulating something about what I said in the past about enhanced biometrics. He put it on his page that this is what Jagdeo said in an interview in the past, and about cleaning up the list. So let me make it clear that we advocated for several changes. The clip that they showed is not the entire clip, and it is not the only time I spoke about election-related matters. We expressed concerns over several things, and those now have been fixed, and I want to tell you how. So we expressed concerns over the role, the outsized and often capricious role of the Chief Elections Officer. We argued that often he makes decisions on the run that can harm the integrity of the elections without the contesting parties being aware of those decisions, and therefore it sends confusing signals to the parties, creates a lot of confusion on election day, but not only among the contesting parties, but within the staff of GCOM. Let me give a couple of examples. So you're aware that people were briefed, all of the presiding officers were briefed that they must take certain documents. The tally sheets belong to the polling agents. Some other documents belong to the polling agents. And Some documents have to be placed in the box after the count. On the East Coast, the instruction was changed, Mingo and the others. So those presiding officers then took the document, they didn't put it in the box, and they carried it to the GCOM Region 4 headquarters and handed it in. In the recount, APNU claimed, we can't find these in the box. So there was rigging here because we can't find these documents. They're not in the box like other places. But the instruction was changed on the just before closing of poll. That is one way of one of the problems we've had. In the past, you recall, the night before the elections, they had not settled on polling places. A list of polling stations. They were busy still negotiating where this would happen. So let me give you an example. The people who live in Fowles, all the way at the back of Fowles, were told that they had to go to the neighboring village in Paradise to vote, nearly 2 miles away from where they live. So you wouldn't have a high turnout. And you know the situation used to be tense in those areas. So that was a problem too. I can give you a long list of issues. So what did we do? We drafted a new amendments to the Representation of People Act. We had public consultations when we got into office. This is 2 years ago. And then we passed a new law. So the new law fixes all of these issues. It fixes everything. Several months before the elections, a manual has to be produced by GCOM that would outline the instructions and the responsibilities to all of the GCOM officials, presiding officers, information clerks, everyone. It will be in a manual. It will outline the role and responsibilities of polling agents. It will say which document has to go in the box and which would have to be submitted directly. It will say which document belongs to the presiding officers and which would belong to the polling agents. It will lay out, so every procedure, everything that has to be done. So the chief elections officer can change instruction thereafter. That document will then be published in the newspapers, shared with the political parties, and then people will be trained. The political parties and GCOM staff will be trained on that. So like what happened several times during the day, the last elections, one presiding officer say, oh, you're not eligible to, like you can't be within 10 feet of the box. But if the rule says you can only be, that is the polling agent, in you can be maximum 7 feet, then they can't restrict the polling agents from doing their work. In some cases, that is what happened. So all of that would be outlined in a document. So it clears up a lot of those issues. Then the count. It outlines the same Representation of People access. When the count is done now, you have to post all the SOPs online before the ROs meet to certify the vote. So every citizen now will see the SOPs long before the elections are certified. Not long before, we're hoping in a day or so the next day. will be certified. So all of the SOPs are published. Then in that video that they're circulating and they put on their page, I was speaking about the capricious behavior of some presiding officers. In the past, they were used to assign a particular presiding officer to a particular polling place. Conspiracy. Now we've argued for random placement. So random placement means no conspiracy. We had cases like in one case, Victoria, in the past, not these elections, I think when we went there, some of our people, they were thrown out. When we look at the national share of the votes, like on average, you will have maybe, say, 85% voting, or 70 to 85%. In those boxes, 99% voted. In the places where and these are not necessarily the last elections, but we've witnessed that before. Because specific polling agents were, presiding officers were assigned to those places. If you have random placement, then it's very different. So we sought to, in that act, which was not there in 2020, now it's much clearer to the population. They would all see the manual before the election, several months before. They will know exactly what will happen on the determination of polling places. So now the chief elections officer can't say, oh, I want to help the PPP or APNU by putting a polling place far away or from where the voters are. In the new law, it defines the geographic boundary, and it also says numbers of voters to a polling place. So you can't put people beyond a certain distance from where they live, and also for every polling place, you can't exceed a certain number. So we have a smooth flow of voting on election day, no overcrowding, etc. All of that is in the new law that was passed since we got into office. So it's a much more transparent system today. I advocated for enhanced biometrics at the polling place. So then, more verification. But the biometrics that we have there, if you look at it, because in the presence of the presiding officer, it worked. They had a robust system in most cases at the polling place. And that is why on the list you had 660,000 people, only 460 voted in the last elections. It meant that those who were not there, who might have migrated but still on the list, that you can't remove their name from the list because of the new constitution now, that they did not vote. They did not vote. The system worked. But my worry about the biometrics is that if these people can come to the recount and lie so much about voters impersonation, no evidence of it, about dead people voting, they even repudiated the signatures of their polling agents to say those people were bribed by the PPP to sign the statements of poll the night of the election. 2,500 of their polling agents, that we bribed them somehow to affix their signatures to the statements of poll. Those were the exaggerated claims, no decency to it, lies, etc. You think you could ever, if they have an iris scan in the polling place, you never get to vote with APNU now. You never get to, they will create a million reasons for you not to vote at the polling place. The same things that they brought to the recount, they can come there. They're just looking for confusion in the future. And we're not going to give them an opportunity for confusion. So we have built a stronger. We will not act unconstitutionally. You cannot remove people's name from the voters list for residency reasons. The system is robust enough to prevent them voting, and they must get strong polling agents like we had in the past to ensure that happens. Each polling agent will have the names of the people. They'll have folios, they can see their picture and everything else to see that they don't vote. It's a robust system. It worked in the past. Nobody complained about that until the recount. And remember, election day, they were all happy. The elections, Granger said everything went well, smoothly. When they thought, they issued statement, the whole polling went well until the results started coming in. They praised everyone, how the polling places work fantastic, they were hardworking, etc. So, several things they're trying to do. They have very little to offer people. They're trying to find a couple of issues to mobilize themselves around causes. One of the new cause, that's why Patterson, the people who signed the 2006 contract, want referendum now. Again, the WPA. The Dodo, the defunct, extinct organization, the WPA. I heard to enter their youth movement, you have to be 90 years and over. They have a youth arm of the party. You have to be 90 years and over. So the thing is that the WPA, so they want referendum now. They want to obfuscate the key issues. They don't want to talk about delivery of house lots to people, fulfilling their dream of owning a home. They don't want to talk about lower mortgage rates for people. They don't want to talk about assistance in building like core homes or young professional homes. They don't want to talk about expansion of healthcare, 12 new hospitals. They don't want to talk about the 13 new water treatment plants and the 9 inline iron removal plants that we're building, or the 200 kilometers of transmission main. They don't want to talk about the investment in power, and it's atrocious. The blackout are killing me too, all the time. But it's atrocious now, and it gets, like today I saw a big container on the East Coast went into one of the poles. Now, these people are just crazy. Some of them drive down the road. Then they have to shut off the power all the time to do their expansion of the road on the East Coast. So it's very disruptive. But they don't want to talk about the gas energy. First they were opposed to it. Now they're trying to say it's their idea. They don't want to talk about the highways we're building or the bridges or more jobs to people. What do they want? They're looking desperately to find some issue to mobilize themselves around. So I hear it's a referendum now they want to talk about, referendum on things. This is the same party that signed the 2016 agreement. So we are not going to get caught in that trap. GCOM must focus on preparing for the 2025 elections. They have to be ready to conduct these elections sometime by August of next year or so, to allow the president the room to decide when he wants to hold the elections. So they have to focus their attention on that issue. They would love to have GCOM or someone else, well, particularly GCOM, divert its attention to something else. We're not falling into that trap at all. So that's the only thing that they can come up with right now. And so that's why like Norton had his protests outside of GCOM. Nobody didn't even know about the protests outside of GCOM, the same thing. People don't pay attention to them much. The people don't pay attention to them. Ignore them totally. So they have a feeble attempt to talk about their track record. They said 15,000 jobs were created under APNU. Look at the feeble. They put out something here, a feeble attempt, but nobody is paying too much attention. I watch it because it comes across my feed. And so 15,000 jobs created by the government Go Invest programs. Where did that happen? In which sector under APNU? Which Go Invest program created 15,000 jobs? How many did we lose? What was the net loss of jobs? The net loss of jobs was over 35,000. They don't understand a concept of net loss. That is what happened. The President 5B initiative, right? Remember there are 3 Bs under the PNC. Before we got into office, they said Bobby, Bharrat, and Brassington, how we were corrupt. You remember those days? Well, Granger expanded it to the 5 Bs, right? And guess what they did? They're shameless. They gave out 1,400 bicycles, 29 old buses, and 10 boats. So, and these were donated, right? So they're putting this now as achievement. I told you the 10,000 per child that they took away, it was 1.6 billion, 1.67 billion to be exact, per year. We had 167,000 kids in public school. If you multiply that by the 5 years, it's 8 billion that they took from the children. How many? You could buy 1,000 buses with that. They gave 29 old buses, 10 boats, and 1,400 bicycles, and think they did a great job to help our children. This is the achievement. They took away money from the children. This is, I go through this here. They introduced 4G internet. I don't know who introduced 4G internet. They introduced 4G internet. CATIUs refused to liberalize the telecommunications sector. We left the law. They passed the law, the PPP draft in 2015. You had to sign a regulation to do this, to bring an act into effect, to liberalize the sector. Guess when it was signed? A month after we got back into office in 2020. Refused to liberalize the telecommunications sector. They forgot to say that they add the VAT on data. But they introduced 4G. This is the list of their accomplishments. It's laughable. Totally laughable. They install 1,500 computers in these hubs that they said they created. We had 2,000 computers already procured for the hinterland, for the hubs, when he got into office. You remember what Granger said? Google it. That he was going to give the computers out to other people. Google where the solar panels for the hubs in the hinterland went. Some are on State House and other places. Never sent it to the hinterland. So they're rewriting all of the entire history here. Listing some, I would be ashamed to list these things as my achievement. It's routine things. Oh, the minister signed a document today. That's a big achievement. They signed some document. This is the type of party we're dealing with. So it's no wonder that they're looking for something now this so-called referendum about the oil and gas sector. Now that brings me to something else. So the whole oil and gas sector, we're claiming that the PPP is, first of all, doesn't want to give Guyanese any assistance. The People's Progressive Party is focusing only on infrastructure, that we should stop doing infrastructure and get some help to Guyanese. This was their mantra for 3 years. So we argued there shall be a balanced policy. We have to do the long-term things necessary to keep our prosperity going way into the future, even beyond oil. And the only way to do that is to expand the productive capacity of the economy and to stimulate non-oil growth, which we've been successful in doing. Investments in the hospitality sector, in agriculture, and multiple other industries. So we've been very successful at that. You've had over 60,000 jobs created in that area. So it's helping people to earn, people who are not working. We've also balanced that off by increasing public sector wages by $90 billion more per year. That's $90 billion more per year since we got into office. That goes into the pocket of our public servants. We've balanced the long-term infrastructure and productive capacity with spending more on the part-time workers. So more women, especially now, have jobs, etc. We're spending another $10 billion there. Balance that by giving our pensioners more money and our children through the cash grant and people living with disability. We've now decided that we want to extend this benefit to every Guyanese because we can afford it now. But we're not giving up on the long-term objectives that they have no clue about because they have no plan until now as a political party. And you can't ignore that. You can't stop building roads because look at the expansion. In 6 months, I read something today, like they finish a whole series of vehicles in 6 months. Now, you know what I mean, the registration. And so that's the prosperity that will come to our people, more and more. Some are moving ahead faster than others, but others will also get help to move up. Everyone, we don't want anyone to be left behind in this country. We're working on that. So you have to do that. They don't want to do that. So after saying this all the time, the PPP, they are amazed that we can actually do both. So the same people who are saying we should do it suddenly are finding now we must not do it, or putting all the obstacles. So Norton, having said, and his people, the PNC having said that in the past, oh, we're being stingy and we're focusing on infrastructure, they're now opposed to foreigners getting it. I see Mervyn Williams, everyone, saying exclude not the foreigners. I mean Guyanese who are not resident in Guyana, but are Guyanese, have a passport or an ID. They don't want them to be eligible. So for weeks they've been at this all the time. Exclude these people, why should they be getting it? All of that. Mervyn Williams, a whole crew of them, the PNC. Now suddenly the people abroad started criticizing them. So they now change their view again and saying that I lied about them. I can show you the articles where they said that the people, the APNU said, and people like Williams and others, that the foreigners or Guyanese abroad should not get it. But this is what they said in a press release. However, VP Jagdeo at his last presser on Wednesday deviously misled his audience in stating we are totally opposed to the idea, as this narrative best fits his Trumpian style of deception and fabrication. Now, this is the PNC official arm the day before the US elections, saying that Trump engages in deception and fabrication. And Jagdeo is following this. This is the day, November. No, this is not the day before. This is November 1st, 1 week before, saying that Trump is a deceptive man and a man who fabricates things. This is the official PNC statement. So I wonder how they would and that Jagdeo is like, I'm taking Trump's way of fabricating things on them, lying basically on them. I wonder how they would reconcile this, the PNC, having said that Trump is a man who is deceptive and fabricates things, how they will engage with his administration, because this is a liar and cheat. And that's your party's official position. This week, November 1st, they said that. Yeah, so they have a hard sell to pull back from this. It didn't come out of like one of their members. It's on their official letterhead that Trump is a liar and engages in deception. So, but they are now backpedaling, say they're not totally opposed to the idea now, but they were opposed to the idea of Guyanese who are non-resident here coming home. Then they tried to lie, saying that I said that only people in New York will get it. It was not so, and that I'm leaving out people from the Caribbean. And it's not true. Guyanese living anywhere in the world, once they meet the eligibility criteria, they will be also benefit from the cash grant. But they have to collect it here, they have to register here and collect it here. We're not doing this abroad. So let me reinforce that again. Then, not to be outdone, the failed politician and failed economist and failed practitioner too, Clive Thomas, he said this is a fly-by-night idea. So there, he is opposed to it too. So the same people who were saying, oh, let's get this done, but they realize now the PVP is actually doing. They thought we couldn't do what we did, which is a massive transformation of infrastructure, and still do this, and still keep our economy growing and not basically overheating the economy, etc. Now we've been able to fit all of this into a sustainable framework. They're now, it's a fly-by-night idea. So the WPA is also opposed to it. Fly-by-night idea. And then the Christopher Ram, he's been writing now about these matters. And I saw, I don't know who wrote this in Starbuck News, because it was just given to me just before my press conference. And I think it may be a newspaper feature. And if it is, they owe me an apology. So they said that the title is Jagdeo Promises Gross Constitutional Violation. Gross constitutional violation. Ali needs to assert his authority. So it starts off by saying Vice President Bharrat Jagdeo, in one of the government's most egregiously constitutional violations, announced at his weekly press conference at the PVP civic headquarters that the government has no intention to seek parliamentary approval for the already bungled cash payout of oil money to Guyanese at home and abroad. So it's already bungled cash payout. We haven't even started the payout as yet, but it's bungled. I said to you that they're working on an app. The finance secretary, the technical officer is responsible for this. The technical people would have, with the audit office, verification of all the payout. We know who are eligible now. Every Guyanese over 18 years old, we know the cutoff date for the eligibility from January 1, 2025. You have to be 18 years old. All of the parameters are there to be implemented now through a system. So the system is clear. They said we already bungled the cash payout, but it hasn't started as yet. But they said, I said that we had no intention to seek parliamentary approval. So I don't know where they got this from. But this has to be from a very ignorant person, uninformed. I'm shocked that they will actually write these things. So I think it comes out of this Christopher Ram's article, where he said we had to seek special legislation to pay out this money. And he quoted the Constitution. So let me quote in the article the Constitution. Article 217 of our Constitution could not be more precise in its requirements. No money shall be withdrawn from the consolidated fund except through proper legislative authorization. Through proper legislative authorization. The article goes on. I'm going to read another section to get to the same points. So their argument is that following the stupidity that Christopher Ram wrote earlier, that we need a special law, that we're not going to, I said, we're not going to seek parliamentary approval, which is a lie, and that you need a special piece of legislation. So they said, a public declaration by the Vice President that the government will ignore this vital constitutional provision in the distribution of over $60 billion without legislative authority or parliamentary oversight represents more than just administrative overreach. It signals a dangerous drift towards autocratic governance that shall alarm every Guyanese citizen. You know, the autocracy comes in at everything in this Starbuck News. We are autocrats. So every person, as an ordinary person now, would know that to give effect to the constitutional provision, there is a piece of legislation called, always there, the authority to withdraw funds. There is a special act that was passed. In the last version of the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act was passed in 2003. I was president at that time. I assented to the law. And it sets out exactly how public money should be spent and should be appropriated. So remember, their argument is that I said we're not going to seek parliamentary approval and we will have no special legislation, or we would have no legislative authority to withdraw the funds. So clearly, Christopher Ram and the Starbuck News people who wrote this don't know that every time you pass a budget, you go to the parliament to appropriate the funds. But when the budget is passed, you cannot withdraw the funds until you have the legislative authority to do so. So there is an act that is assented to by the president that then gives you the right to do so. I have a copy of the act here for 2024. So after the budget is passed, it says Act number 1 of 2024, Appropriation Act 2024. President Ali assented to it. It sets out all of the money appropriated by Parliament. You see pages of it for every ministry. It sets it out here in a special act. This is the legislative, an act of the government of Ghana. It's gazetted, so they can't claim ignorance. But I know people like Christopher Arm probably isn't even aware of this on the reporters. But there is a special act that is the authority from which the Ministry of Finance then uses to withdraw funds from the consolidated fund. You have to pass it here. If there is a supplementary during the course of the year, like this one here, Supplementary Appropriation Act, assented to again by President Ali. So you can't spend a cent. The money, the 60 billion can't drop from the sky. It can't fall from the sky. As I said before, you have to appropriate it. It means parliamentary oversight. So they said no parliamentary oversight. You have to go to the parliament to appropriate the money. So that means debate in the parliament. You request a supplementary provision. You debate it in the parliament, parliamentary oversight. It gets passed. But even when it's passed, you cannot withdraw the funds as yet. You then have to put it, gazette it, and it has to be assented to by the president. This is a special legislative act, an assent by the president. This is called an act. And so all week they're writing nonsense. And the Starbuck News lied on me, I said, we are not going to, has no intention to seek our parliamentary approval. I never said that. I said that we're not going to have to pass a special act called Cash Grant Act. If we had to do that, we would have had to pass a one for the business grant for everything. It's all covered under the FMA, and also under these special acts that emanate from the constitutional process of appropriating funds. So they have legislative approval. The $60 billion or whatever it comes up to will go to the parliament. There would be a full debate there. And then it would, once it's passed, it will then have to be put in a supplementary act, assented to by the president, published in the official gazette, and only then the funds would be available. But a child should know this. You know, being around people, I just don't understand the level of ignorance that we have to contend with every single day. And all week, Christopher Ram and the Starbuck at it again, because they want to slow it down. This is consistent with their plan. So first of all, say PPP not going to do it. The PPP did it, right? Then they all change their minds now. They're fly-by-night idea to give Guyanese money and stuff. Now let's slow it down. Let's slow it down. We need a special act to do this. If you don't have a special act, you're an autocratic government. We have to go to the parliament and debate it in the parliament. That's how it works. It's normal. And every week we have to deal with this sort of thing. And you have to deal with it. It's a particular class, the Borti Ramcharan from it's from these are people and the Gold Saran and the Christopher Rams and the Clive Thomases. People who were like, I told you, I'm already an old man, and they were old when I was a boy. Where are the young people? That's the same fossils all the time. So Christopher Ram is opposed to us giving, not Christopher Ram, Gold Saran this week, and they get find place in the Starbuck News. There's a particular class of people who believe they know everything. And forget young people and all of that. They're the conscience of the society. They're the serious, look at serious violators of all the laws. Look at the same Gold Saran this week. He's opposed to us giving a Guyanese company, Floyd Haynes and another consortium of Guyanese, the right to audit the third audit for the oil contract. And he talks about involvement of the Auditor General, citing the 2004 Act. And I have told you that he was in violation of the 2004 Act when he accepted a call from the minister and got contracts directly. He was in violation of the Act. He didn't know about the rights of the audit office at that time. This is the same sort of people that we have. They lecture every week. So this week it was about slowing down everything. And we are autocratic because we are trying to give every Guyanese $100,000. We become autocratic now. We have a transparent system to distribute. We made it clear every eligible Guyanese, so we don't have to determine households anymore, and that could cause confusion. We know the target group. We become autocratic because they have a misunderstanding. Well, an interpret. I don't know if they know that the appropriations that we go through in Parliament, that you have to go through, that you have to seek if you spend public fund, that they have a legislative form that has to be assented to by the president, and this serves as the authority for the withdrawal from the consolidated fund. Every single cent has to find itself through an act that is assented to by the president, and it is a provision of the FMAA. So they're saying, oh, we have no intention of going to the Parliament. Jagdeo said that, and no intention of giving it a legislative form. This is the article. Look at it here. Front page, first line. Jagdeo said no intention to seek parliamentary approval. A blatant lie on which, and then said, oh, Jagdeo violating the Constitution. And already the cavalier disregard for the constitutional framework invites comparisons with many third world countries. This is the cavalier disregard of the Constitution. We're acting in compliance with the Constitution. The Constitution, the FMAA, the Appropriation Acts. And now you want to bet Starbuck News will not, or Christopher Ram will not run a feature on what APNU did in flagrant violation of the Constitution in that period, not the political violation. I'm talking about because they did that through the no confidence motion, unilateral appointment of the chairman of GCOM, etc. But as it relates to financial matters, do you know it's illegal to spend if you don't have a budget beyond a certain year? So the entire 2020, there was no budget for 2020. There was no budget. So they could not have spent money. And even so, particularly in the capital. So if you concede, well, money to pay the public servants' wages, that's fine. I will concede on that. But no appropriation, it is a criminal act to spend money on the capital. Criminal act, malfeasance for the whole government. Guess how much they spent? They spent $121 billion from January 1 to the 31st of July 2020 without any appropriation, in violation of the Constitution. Pure, they spent it without any parliamentary approval. And $31.6 billion on capital. $153 billion spent without any approval through appropriation process and in flagrant violation of the Constitution. We had to fix it when we come into office. We had to go back and fix this. The first budget that I was responsible for crafting, because as soon as we got there, as we did in 4 to 6 weeks, we had to take account of all of this in 2020. They thought it's impossible to get it in 4 to 6 weeks to produce a budget. We not only produced the budget, took care of all of these issues, but we also fulfill a lot of our promises, the manifesto promises. And we were in the COVID period, and we did all of that. We hit the ground running. So where is Christopher Ram on all this $153 billion spent by APNU without any appropriation? That was in violation of the Constitution. I just laid out how every cent we are spending and we intend to spend, including for the cash grant, will be in full compliance with the Constitution and our financial laws. They lied the Starbuck News and Christopher Ram keep lying about this all the time. So, and misquoted me to say I said we'll never seek parliamentary approval. How else are we going to get the money? If every week we have to deal with this sort of lying. So again, if you want to paint a picture, this week I saw a report. I was just looking at it. Someone sent it to me. Region 9 contractor given 100 years to repay $6 million to government. So I saw it and I got a bit angry. Because I thought, first of all, why would an REO do this sort of thing in the Public Accounts Committee? And we're taking a tough line now on people who got advances, some even covered by bonds. We're taking back the money from them. And then I looked at it carefully, and it was APNU period. They were talking about the period under APNU. So this person got the contract, several contracts in the Rupunoni, and then APNU paid him this money in advance of doing the work. So when they talk about the REO, Carl Singh also conceded that payments were made to contractors before the work began. Somehow it made Carl Singh look like he paid out the money. But Carl Singh was not the REO in 2015, 2016. He conceded, yes, it was paid because he has to answer for the APNU period. He is the current REO. But it made it look like Carl Singh paid out the money, before the work, like it started under the PPP, and then we paid the man all the money, and now Carl Singh is now trying to collect back the money that he gave out. Now, the explanation given that the man is ill, Carl Singh wrote him several letters since we got into office. I saw the letters. Every year you have the money outstanding, and he's not coming. They said he is gravely ill. And the man came and said, I could only afford $5,000 a month. And he's sick, very sickly. And not that there's an agreement, but he said he will pay $5,000. But Carl Singh is doing his duty to recover the money that was given to the man in 2016 when he wasn't the REO there. But he got hammered here basically in the article. People think, oh, this Carlson give out a contract here, the man got it, and it all happened in the PPP era. If you're so concerned about all of this, this goes again, gets swept or it gets distorted. You're talking about financial accountability. That's what we were just talking about. I just pointed out 153 billion that they spent without parliamentary or approval in violation of the Constitution and the financial laws. Now here again. And we have to take the heat for this. It came over as though this REO is doing wickedness there. It's not him. He's trying to recover, but he conceded that the money was paid. So people think he did it. But he was talking about the past, the way it's written. I'm going on for a little while now, so let me just reiterate that all of those who are violating now the Local Content Act, they have a lot to worry about. Let me just say that, because we intend to crack down on it. This act was designed to give benefits to our people, Guyanese. And if there are a few people here who are using it to confer the benefits so that the foreign companies can get these benefits that are set aside for our people, and they're collaborating with the foreigners, then they run the risk of not just losing the certification, but also according to facing the fines in accordance with the act. We're serious about this, and there are multiple ways we're looking at. We're examining the ways in which they're doing this, and the information is credible, and we're going to act on this information soon. So, in fact, we've started acting on it already. These are just some of them. Maybe I can move on to questions here. Thank you. Short day today.
Mr. Jagdeo, Dennis Shabral, Demerara. Sir, I have a few questions here for you, please. One, to what extent does the Guyana government believe that the Trump administration will be comparatively easier to do business with in the area of fossil fuel extraction? And relatedly, what new or increased investment areas do you envisage between the U.S. and Guyana under the Trump administration?
Let me get it down, Dennis. So one,
to what extent does the Guyana...
Easier to do business, right?
Right, is it, and also...
To do business on fossil fuel?
Yes.
Okay.
And do you have any ideas about any new or increased areas of investment that government will plan to explore with the Trump administration or the U.S. private sector?
New areas?
Yes, new areas. And on the electoral scene, why back then did you want biometrics? And how does the JICA manual invalidate the opposition calls for biometrics? And will the Guyana government support the spending of $20 million US on biometric equipment?
And so yes, yes, go ahead. And what's the next one? So I understand the biometrics one.
Right. The next one is sugar. Government being the sole shareholder of
Okay, sugar. Sugar, that's 4.
Of Gaisuco. What explanations are being given by the corporation for its dismal performance? And finally, what negotiations are ongoing with Frontera CJX to preserve its presence in the quarantine block?
What discussions are going on? So let me start with the discussions with CJ. As I'm aware now, there are no discussions going on. That's what I'm aware of. I don't know if they've reached out to the Ministry of Natural Resources, but from the briefs that I got from the minister, there be no negotiation or discussion at this specific point in time. On sugar, I was with the president a few days ago, and he said to the Minister of Agriculture, directed him to meet with all the parties, the union, the management, and a number of other people who have an interest or knowledge of sugar, to get a report back to him. So their argument has been that they have expanded the cultivation. They're doing quite a bit of work in cultivation to get more canes from the field, and that they will increase back their target. They will go back, from what I heard, they'll make between 60 to 70,000 tons this year. So clearly that is below their target. So they have, the Minister of Agriculture has to explain to the president why they're underperforming on their target, and to give credible explanation. So he has asked that. I don't want to be premature before that report comes back to the president. But let me make it one clear. People like Ramjatan should never mention anything about sugar. He will show up next week to fight for the sugar workers, give me his dismal record that sugar workers have been doing. They have been working very hard. There's a lot of things are stacked against them. When you have so much, you need to reorient almost the entire industry. I've seen the attempt to do so now in a major way. The conversion of the beds for mechanization, that requires a lot of capital input now, but will yield the benefits later. For mechanized harvesting and sowing, that has been done, if you see the pictures. The variety of cane they're bringing in now on planting would have higher yields, and already we're seeing this summer coming from Brazil. We're looking at Cuba to bring in, because all of the old ratoons, the old cane, are now yielding the kinds of variety. We've had cases where from India, the technical specialists who came down here, who said you can get double the output per hectare if you just change the variety, and work is ongoing on that. The third thing is the quality of the factories themselves. A lot because of deferred maintenance and lack of capital, major capital input. Sometimes they don't perform at peak. The fourth is some management issues with workers and management. So these are some of the things that will be discussed, but I don't, as I said before, I don't want to be premature before the report goes to the president from the Minister of Agriculture. On enhanced biometrics, I explained before that the enhanced biometrics was not to shut out people from the polling place, but to ensure that at the polling place we don't have people who are voting, who shouldn't vote. And that's why I said we should explore the possibility of enhanced biometrics. Their enhanced biometrics is to shut down and start off from scratch. That is what they're looking at. I don't have an objection to any system, biometrics or not, that will help, what will seek to ensure that the people who vote are the people who are eligible to vote, no other person, and no impersonation. That is what. The PPP will never, ever be opposed to anything of that nature. I've spoken many times about cleaning up the list. I pushed at GCOM. I said it here. I said, don't wait to get these dead people off. Wait on a couple this year and a couple next year. Go back for maybe 10, 15 years and get the entire list from GRO and publish it in the newspapers and send it to the political party and remove all of them. If you have 30,000 or 40,000 dead people on the list, we can do that now. We are in favor of this. And we're still in favor of ensuring that you find some system where people can't beat the system at the polling place. But you must not do it to humbug voting there. That is what, given the track record of the PNC and AFC and what they came up with in the recount. And could I ask Guyanese to go back and read the CARICOM report on the recount? Then you will see how devious these people are. The APNO and the AFC leadership. How devious, how unprincipled, how it's unbelievable, callous they are. They have no respect whatsoever for people's intelligence to see through their shenanigans. They just blatantly were trying to steal the elections. And I see them coming about, and when they talk about biometrics, they're talking about disruption. When I talk about biometrics, or when I talk about enhancement, I'm talking about ensuring greater transparency in the elections. And that's what we have done. And now, with everything that I laid out in the new Representation of the People Act, we could have a system strengthen the system that we had before. The flaw in the system was not, if you go back, was not wholly, it was not systemic. It was people, the corrupt people who tried to steal the elections. Because Mingo sought to move away from using the SOPs, which is the standard thing to do. It happened in all other 9 regions. The SOPs were used as the basis for the declaration of the results in those regions. It's Mingo who moved away from it. Not that the SOPs were wrong. He just moved away. It's a people thing. And that is why in the new law, we strengthen the penalties too for anyone from the political parties or from GCOM who would attempt to steal elections. There are some serious penalties under the new act now, including jail term. Hopefully that will be a deterrent, because that is what happened. They tried to move away from the system. Now we can improve the system a bit by doing the things that we did in Roper. But remember the last election where the threats came from. It came from a government that was trying, through its flunkies in GCOM, was trying to steal the elections by moving away from established procedures. And now all of that is gone. You can't now, no RO will be able to do that, because every voter, every person in the country will have the SOPs. The moment he starts calling a different number, they'll say, what's the matter with this guy here? So we've immeasurably strengthened the system. But as is often the case, the PNC has already, and AFC, started looking at reasons for their defeat next year. They're looking at it. Nobody in the right sense think that they would win the elections. What would they offer to anybody? You just came out of 5 years of depression, bloating the economy, arrogance, nothing, no plan. They don't even have a plan now. Can you imagine this party that came out of office a couple years ago? Don't have a plan. They want to create a plan now. They're telling you, we must all work to create a plan for the future. Don't have a plan for anything. And even the oil and gas sector, they want a referendum, but they said, let's do some studies if we get back into office. studies on what's wrong with the PSA. They don't know what's wrong with the PSA as yet. They want to study, review the PSA in the future if they get back into office, but they want a referendum on the PSA. It's just, oh, you got to be really shallow to take them seriously. So that's on the electoral matters.
It's biometrics. Would you support the spending of the 20.7 on a biometric?
I haven't seen any proposal. This is all for GCOM. This is GCOM. I can speak as Jagdeo, the General Secretary of the PPP. GCOM deals with those matters. GCOM is in charge of elections. GCOM will have to follow the Constitution to see that we have clean elections. That's what we're interested in the People's Progressive Party. We're interested in that. If GCOM does that, there are commissioners there who make that decision. If whether the government, whatever GCOM wants to ensure that the elections are properly held, they will get financially, there will be no constraint to free and fair elections or clean elections. Financially, there shall be no constraint to that. But GCOM have to make these decisions. And I suspect with that cabal there, you see the Vincent Alexander's cabal, if you track what they've been doing at GCOM all the time, they've never sought to help to have free and fair elections. Look at the role they played in the period in 2020. So I saw recently they are criticizing the chair for appointing 2 new persons. So if you don't appoint pro-PN, the PNC got some people that they send to apply at GCOM. And if you don't appoint them, they cuss the chair. People know these are PNC individuals they want to put in the positions. But that is how it used to be in the past. Those people that were appointed recently, I'm saying their name for the first time. But GCOM did this on their own. The commissioners got together. So this is how they operate in there. Would it be easier to do business with the Trump administration on fossil fuel? The Trump administration has a particular view on fossil fuel. But I don't see any major change because on the production of oil and gas, we have not had any major differences with the US government. I recall at the beginning, right at the beginning of President Biden's term, I got a call from a senior official, and they were speaking about the gas to energy project and trying to convince us that maybe we should go only for renewables, the hydro and stuff like that, that it would be locking in an investment in fossil fuel for a long period. So that was in the middle of the pandemic when we had just got into office and we were talking. And we explained at that time that all of our energy comes from burning fossil fuel, either diesel or bunker C, which are very polluting. That if we move to gas, we'd be able to cut the emissions by 40%. Secondly, that's one. So even by just moving from current state to that, we'll cut emissions. Secondly, the magnitude of power we need, even a mile would not, that we predicted we'll need, a mile would not be able to fulfill that. Thirdly, the time frame for building a mile. And that globally, there was a tendency now to move to gas as a transition energy from coal and diesel and bunker to renewables. So we argue that this is a global transition. You can't do the transition because there is no source of renewable energy now. You have to go through this transitional fuel. And so that happened, and we forged ahead with the project. And then globally, everyone accepted that, including the US government. And today, under the Biden administration, they're providing a loan for the project. It's going to go to the board soon. Well, very soon. So they move from not wanting to use gas as a transitional fuel to even supporting the project over the years. And so we haven't had any conflict with the US government. There was one other thing. GISB was seeking a loan at the Inter-American Development Bank. And the US government at that time, the early days, also vetoed the loan there because they said it was related to fossil fuel. But thereafter, we had a major improvement in the relationship. And so we didn't have major differences, and we don't anticipate any major difference with President Trump on this matter too. In fact, I think we'd have a good working relationship with his government on this issue too. It may be easier for American companies to be able to finance fossil fuel related projects now, like the gas to energy project. The second one, I'm talking about the monetization of gas, might be easier for them to be able to make proposals in this regard too. But we do not anticipate any conflict here. In fact, we believe it would be as good as with the Biden administration, or even better in this area. The new areas for investment, there are no area that is barred from foreign investment now. So American brands are here. Almost all the hotels that, although they're built, a lot of them by Chinese companies, they're American brands, and the locals would have to pay the franchise fee to American companies. If you look at most of the hotels would be branded American. In the fossil fuel sector, two of the three big shareholders in the project that we have now are American companies, ExxonMobil and Hess. You have a lot of American companies that are investing in many areas as well as other companies. So no area was barred in the past, so I don't think we need to say now that President Trump will take office in January that we'll open up some area that was barred in the past from American investment.
Mr. Jagdeo, I want to press you a little more on the enhanced biometrics. Would you and your party seek to persuade your representative commissioners on the commission to vote in favor of this at the commission?
I have to see what is recommended. I have to see what specifically is recommended. As I explained to you before, that it must not be used, nothing there must not be used to disenfranchise voters at the polling place. Knowing APNU, knowing what they did with the recount and the law that they helped to draft, and the claims about the tally sheets. You remember the tally sheets confusion? That I think they're probably looking for things that will be disruptive on election day. Disruptive. And we've been at this for a long time. We're not going to fall in any trap. We want clean voting. We want as many observers in the country as possible. We believe that all the parties must have their representatives well trained. We're under the new manual. so they know their rights and responsibilities in the polling place. We want all of that done. But we're not going to fall into any trap, or we want a referendum on something on the ballot here, the same ballot, etc. We're not going to fall into any trap that APNU likes to set along the way. And something that looks benign for them has a sinister motive. They've done this 1,000,000 times over. The last attempt to do the house, they already had it planned. They already had it planned. How to drop the people and everybody. So 50,000 people drop off, and you can't have time to put them on back. And guess where they would drop them off? In the PPP's base. So we're not new at this. We're not new at this. We've seen APNU manifested their worst, and they're unrepentant. They're unrepentant. You would think they're the Democrats in this society. When you listen to them, they're fighting for free and fair elections. They wouldn't know free and fair elections if it landed on their heads.
But it's not disruptive.
Yes, it's not disruptive. We have to look at it, yeah, but I don't want to make it look like we're going to be, you asked me the question. So I don't want the headline to say Jagdeo to push GCOM commissioners, right? Okay.
Very clear in what you're saying.
Once it's not disruptive to the voting, and it doesn't disenfranchise voters, and it doesn't delay the elections and all of that, we look at it favorably. I take it to the executive of the party, and we look at it. But we
funds if necessary.
Yeah, the funding for GCOM is something that must not be in dispute. That's separate from politics. Whatever GCOM needs to conduct free and fair elections, they will get from the government of Guyana. Whatever they need to conduct free and fair elections. That will not be a constraining factor.
Dr. Jagdeo, Cordell Jones from Livewire News. Is the government aware of allegations circulating on social media about 150 million old age pension theft?
Yeah, so this is an old matter. I recall Dr. Vindhya Prasad raising this matter, that they discovered that some of the books might be duplicated by individuals who might be working in gangs or on their own. And the police were asked to look into this matter. In fact, she raised it with me one time, and I called Hickins directly to say this is a serious matter. We should look at it because this is large sums of money. And my big fear at that time was if they draw down the money on someone's book, then the pensioner who goes there would not get their money. And so, sometimes you don't even get a feedback from the pensioner. So they told me that it is, it's being duplicated. So the police are looking into this matter. This is not a new matter now, and I expect that they would take condign action with anyone who is involved in this. Charge them, put them before the court, etc. That they would, and they throw the full weight of the law on these people. We had a discussion with Ashni Singh, and we said to him that the new books you'd have the different method of printing these books, that they would have to be almost embossed, so that they'd have to have additional security features that would be hard to replicate. So right now he is looking at this. I hope it doesn't delay the printing of the books, but they already know what the pension rate will be for next year. It's $41,000 per month. It will go up from $36,000 to $41,000 per month next year. Remember, it was $20,500 when we got into office, and we said we'll double it in the 5 years. And so the books, we know the sum of money. He has to now get these books printed in a manner that they can't be replicated or hard to replicate. They have to put in additional security features. And we need to take strong action against those who try to support the system. That is, they are duplicating some of these books. It might be a gang.
Jagdeo, Mikhail Rodriguez for Daybreak News. Is the government a little more confident in a Trump administration based on the experiences of Trump? A previous Trump administration had to weigh in and ward off the stealing of elections in Guyana in the past, and the way that the recent administration, the Kamala Harris administration, was very receptive to a lot of lies by the opposition out of their New York base. Is there more confidence from your government in a Trump administration?
So clearly, the earlier Trump administration knew about the plot to rig the elections. The ambassador was here at that time. The ambassador saw the plot unfold before her very eyes. I recall her being in the Lennox John building, and there at, it's Ashmin's building right here, Ashmin's building, and people calling in a bomb threat, and uncharacteristically, because normally you should spirit away the ambassador. The ambassador and others refused to leave, even with the bomb threat. They stood their ground. And so they saw the whole plot and the obscenity of it. And they know the central players, they knew the central players in that plot. And they saw the repeated attempt to subvert the system. So, and these reports would have been filed with the State Department. So, if you talk about familiarity with the APNU and its crookedness, the earlier Trump administration would be very familiar with that. After that administration change, they, through a series of lies, the APNU and AFC and their lunatic fringe and their surrogates, the crooks abroad, tried to change what actually took place. And they might have misled some public officials in the US. But I think those officials too, over time, started to wise up about what's happening in Guyana. So I don't know, because people like Burke, he's been claiming, but he makes so many false claims. Oh, that, and I mentioned it about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that there's some officials in the regime who are engaged in regime change in Guyana. And they will do so by targeting PPP officials, by influencing the law enforcement authorities in New York to harass them. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know, because just recently, you know, you had somebody claiming that Gail Teixeira was questioned there, and it's not true. So I don't know about this speculation and all of that. But clearly, the Trump administration, the early administration, knew about who the people were. And that is why they threatened sanctions against them. They threatened sanctions against the Granger administration. So we intend to work with everyone. We want to work with Democrats and Republicans. We work with the Biden administration. We want to work with the Trump administration. And we hope that more and more that people will see them for what they are. They don't care about Afro-Guyanese. They only try to use Afro-Guyanese as a mobilizing factor in hopefully to get back into office to continue the wickedness they did, not to help them. And people will see through that. So I'm not too worried about it.
Just about 2 months now, the opposition leader has not been basically heard of on anything of substance. That position has been taken by Nigel Hughes. Will you be looking at Nigel Hughes as the new opposition leader, or you're looking at the opposition as non-existent at this time?
Nigel Hughes, for the uninitiated, Nigel Hughes is an AFC. They're engaged in showmanship. So they have these press conferences, 30 releases a day. I think policy-wise and commitment-wise, they're worse than the PNC. They're worse. They're a set of opportunities and family members and a Georgetown crew that's hanging out together, who are very, very elitist and disparaging of ordinary people, and they miss the perks a lot. They miss the gold bangles that they used to get and all of that sort of thing. They miss those things. So I have no respect whatsoever for this group. Every one of them, if you look at them, they were a failure in government, failure in their ministries, in their portfolio. So they talk a lot, but as I pointed out, very little of substance. What is of substance? When did they say anything of substance? Take for example on oil and gas sector. This was the party that signed the 2016 agreement. Your track record there. Your leader now, who has been leader a couple of times before, chairman before, and tries to make himself look new now. I'm the new knight in shining armor coming to save you. And he's been muddied by the past. He refuses to resign from his job at Exxon. He's on Exxon's payroll. Now, today as we speak, Nigel Hughes is on Exxon's payroll. And who said in the first interview after he got appointed to the position, he said, if Guyana's interests were to conflict with those of ExxonMobil, I'll take their side. That's their position on oil and gas. Forget everything else. So they signed the worst agreement. He was on the other side when they signed the agreement, and a member of his leadership, current leadership, was the negotiator. That's their track record here. And now, this new track record. So all this little noise about, oh, we want referendum, that's noise. That's their position. Secondly, what are their plan for economic development? You heard what they said? Oh, we should all get together and work on a plan for the future. They don't have a plan for anything. They just, let's get together and work on a plan for the future. Where is the substance? Where is this? Oh, we want now, it's about free and fair elections, but you can't condemn the attempt to steal elections. You got temporarily blind. You didn't see the SOPs. Where is the substance on decency? What substance are you talking about? Clearly, we're not saying the same thing. They don't have any substance whatsoever. So if you think that Norton didn't have anything on substance, they are even worse. They're more wordy than Norton. They'll talk longer, and they'll carry the whole leadership of the party to the press conference. But they have no substance too. Where is the substance? On what issue? Pit latrines? So he discovered pit latrines in the hinterland? Where is the thing? What about healthcare? What are your? We have 12 new hospitals. We're hiring 6,000 people to work in the health sector. What's your counter to that? What about housing? Nothing. Absolutely nothing of substance. Just sung nice at a press conference. Think you can fool people by sounding erudite. So they're more focused on form than substance. Form. Long press conferences. Norton and the others, yeah, I agree with you too. He may not have anything much of substance, but I think they're a bit more, still a little bit more genuine than the AFC. This is a motley bunch of con men that have owned the past, and they continue to be this way.
Jagdeo, being the first person who identified the conflict of interest between Nigel Hughes and ExxonMobil, after that, a number of persons, legal luminaries and political pundits came out and identified how it was so. Does the government have any way of forcing Nigel Hughes to tell the citizens of this country how much money does he get from ExxonMobil?
That's the next question. How much have you earned from Exxon over the last several years, from 2016 to now? And did you get any special bonus when the contract was signed? Somebody should ask him that at a press conference. That's why you should have these, because he'll run from it. He will tell you, oh, that's lawyer, that's my fee, etc. You're running for public office. He wants to run for president now. It's the same thing like the other lunatic, what's his name, Glenn Lamb. He declares he's running for presidency. Now when we say his paper is a party paper, oh, Jagdeo is opposed to he getting ads, we're treating him unfairly, this big bad Jagdeo, evil Jagdeo. All week I saw, oh, this one, Bharrat Jagdeo into a sinister figure of darkness and all of that stuff like that. All day they're cussing me. Now, you declared you want to be president, you want to run for presidency. Your paper is a rag, it's always been. And now you think you have preferences for the government. Add to. We must help him. The PVP must help him to spread the lies that he did. And so the same thing here with Nigel Hughes. He will run from the question. Let him tell you how much he earns from Exxon and his law firm. That might be a good question next week to ask him.
Do you think that this is a loophole and maybe government has to look at legislation that could close loopholes like this, since Nigel Hughes is not saying how much money he's getting and maybe might be getting money and using that money for campaigning? Is there an accountability process for politicians who are using loopholes such as this? And if there's a loophole, would your government look at legislation to close that?
Yes, but this here, there is something like, it's called decency in politics. So if you're running for the top post in the country, or you claim you want to do that, and you're saying now, I want to run for the top post, but I'm not prepared to give up my money that I'm earning now. And not to take the country's side when my client interests conflict with that of the country. How could you say you're running on our behalf of that? This is, in another country, people would already wipe the floor with him. In a normal country, a person says that, immediately you get disqualified. You think in the US or UK or even in the Caribbean, you think a politician could say that and get away with it? The next day, he's done. His whole career is done. And here in Guyana, it's normal. A man who openly says this. And so, in this case too, normally you're politically exposed. He is politically exposed. His wife is a member of parliament. His party that he heads is in parliament with the ability to influence legislation. How is that not a conflict of interest? Could it be, as that's what we're saying, that if Exxon says to him, you know, we would like the oil spill legislation that's going soon. We want you to take a position on this because you're a lawyer. All he has to do is to tell his people in the parliament, members of his party, his MPs, his subordinates in the party, that you have to vote this in this manner. There's a clear case of conflict. I saw this, the Kite News trying to equate what Sam Hines was saying with him, one of the clowns over there. And they were saying, oh, they're uniform in their condemnation. How come I condemn him and I didn't condemn Sam Hines for writing a couple of letters? The difference is Sam Hines expresses an opinion. Sam Hines is not on Exxon payroll. Sam Hines could express his opinion, but he's not on Exxon's payroll. That's the big difference. So here is this. So there are conventions now about politically exposed people. You know, what if tomorrow I say I want to work for Exxon, but I'm the head of a political party now? I want that contract from Exxon and a big lucrative thing. People, you think, what would they say? The Kite News will be staging protests outside. Every day Glenn Lyle would blow his top on his tic-tac, you know, that's what he does, right? He'd be blowing his top. Imagine that, if I say that, because that's a parallel. I'm working, and I say that if Exxon interests conflict with that of the country, I'll take their side. They would, all of this. Starbuck News will come out and talk about autocracy. He would talk about selling out people's interests. Everybody will jump down on us. But he gets a free pass. So this is, yeah, go ahead.
So my real concern is, in a lot of cases, the citizenry have the opportunity to get redress, in certain cases, through the judiciary. In light of the fact that the AFC has played this role so well and deceived the citizenry, what will the PPP be putting in place to protect, if it is so glaring that this is a conflict of interest? Is there anything your party
I think we'd have to, I think we should, you should ask them to put that to a referendum. They like referendum, to talk about conflict of interest on the referendum. However, I think maybe you'd have to strengthen our laws, and also not just with public officials, but a number of these people have a way sometimes when they come into the country, they can silence the populace through different medium. And we have to make sure that we are through different media. So we have to ensure in the future that they don't have an overweight influence, because when Exxon and the other companies go, they can influence bodies. So they become part of, say for example, a private sector arm. I'm not going to say which body. So suddenly, instead of taking the country's side, that they start taking the company's side because they are a member of a particular body. So we have to explore all of these things. And by the way, I saw a big debate. There are some things we have to, now that you raised this, we'd have to start looking at public companies and how we protect small shareholders' rights, either through tougher provisions in the Companies Act or through the Securities Council. And I'm just throwing that out there today because I don't want to get bogged down with that too at this stage. But it's something that just crossed my mind because sometimes small shareholders in public companies are being ripped off by unscrupulous management.
Dr. Jagdeo, one last question. Being the head of the PPP, the question I asked earlier about Aubrey Norton, do you think the PNC has lost its motion to go forward, its ability to go forward under Norton's leadership? Because most likely parties have intelligence, they share intelligence, or they're just recouping to come back with more lies and deceit for their followers.
I don't like to comment too much on the internal affairs of these parties. I'll comment on their public expression of what I perceive to be their internal processes. So they all are very challenged. Both of the parties are challenged. And I think that Nigel Hughes and the others, the AFC, they're poaching now on PNC's support. So I think they've given up on winning the elections. They're trying to poach PNC's support by drawing people away from the PNC, by claiming they're more intellectual or they're more honest or more decent, all of which are sham, of course. And they're going after PNC support to draw that. So, because I know for sure they're not making any headway in the PPP support areas, nor, in fact, we are doing some work, much more work in communities that traditionally didn't support the PPP. So that's where the conflict is between the two parties. And so they're trying to show up Norton every time. That's why they carry but they can't do it because they carry the whole leadership of the party to a single press conference. I can see the whole leadership of a party at a press conference, like they don't have anything to do. You know, and you go there and talk nonsense too all day long. It's a sad shape. That's your intellectual. That's the totality of your intellectual power there. So I can call on thousands of PPP intellectuals who are doctors and in different areas, economists, they're scientists, a whole range. We have great intellectual prowess and depth, young people, old people. I don't have to bring all of them here, but when I speak, I'm speaking with the knowledge that we have a huge base out there of every race, every religion that has phenomenal ability to come up with solutions. So I'm capitalizing on that strength. They go there and behind nothing. That's the cream. Nothing. They don't have anyone behind them. It's a sad thing. I look at them and they look pathetic every time they go there, especially when they're floundering around. And Nigel Hughes pretend he's the conductor. Oh, I'm passing that to Patu. I'm passing this one to Ramjatan. I'm passing this one over here, the conductor. We don't do conductor press conferences.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo and also William, Skytree News. Sir, recently you had suggested that by not implementing a ring-fencing provision for the oil projects in the Starbuck block, Guyana is strategically foregoing short-term benefits to reap greater long-term gains. However, in light of the World Bank in a recent commodity markets outlook forecasting a decline in oil prices attributed to an anticipated global oil surplus, do you still hold this position?
Often, people who are uninitiated, they put a lot of store on these IFIs and the reports they produce. For people who are actually in the sector, they pay scant regard to those reports. So if you ask any of the oil majors around the world about this World Bank report, economic outlook report, they probably wouldn't even know about it. Nobody pays attention to this. In the past, they're doing business guide. Very few people. I met once in New York around the UN with several CEOs. So I asked them, how many of you, when you go to a country to invest, read the doing business guide that the World Bank used to produce? Something of that nature. And none of the CEOs were aware of this, that there even was such a document produced. And then we found out eventually that countries were paying off staff to rank them higher on the index. So if you look at the oil market and the people who forecast oil markets, you wouldn't turn to the World Bank as the authority on this. And oil markets are very fickle in nature. So you may have a glut today, but you have a shortage in the future. Say, for example, a single event. So assuming if you had Iran not being able, say there was a sustained, like in the conflict with Israel, their oil assets were damaged. You remove nearly 2 million barrels per day from the world market. If you have, say, war or something in the shipping lanes, in the like what the Houthi student from Yemen did, you can see closure of shipping lanes that cause oil prices to skyrocket. So a lot of these events are, in the long run, they're driven by assumptions, but then things move. When you look at short markets, the spot markets, you tend to see a number of influencing factors. That's when global politics and even economics wane heavily. I don't, when you look at capacity, now, a lot of the oil majors have not been investing in fact, they're divesting a lot of their production resources. They're moving more to downstream sorts of activity, not upstream. And so I think the prices would be sustained long enough for us to be able to utilize the resources that we get from the oil and gas sector to invest in our economy in a manner that keeps us safe from the ravages of climate change, or safer through adaptation, that we can utilize the resources to stimulate non-oil investments, to grow the non-oil economy to such a level that our future prosperity will not be impaired, that we can utilize the oil resources to get the highest level of education and healthcare services to our people, that would allow us to save also some of these resources for the future, for intergenerational equity, I think it would last, the markets and the investments that are currently being made would last into that future. And so, especially given how I started the press conference by speaking of the trajectory towards sustainability and how we're way off that trajectory and not enough is being done to bring us back onto the sustainable trajectory. Now, if the US were to start pumping more oil, that also becomes a factor, greater supply to the market. President Trump has said he wants to do that, greater energy independence. So that may have an impact on markets too. The good thing is that our crude is light sweet crude. It's a good quality crude. And it's also, our break-even cost is below many countries in the world. So if you had to fall off the chart, the production chart, on the basis of quality of crude and break-even costs, many other countries will fall off before we fall off the chart. So those are important factors.
So just to clarify, you don't find this report findings worrying at all?
No, because when you look, I'm sure if you read the people who deal on a daily basis, remember these economic outlook reports are produced either once every 3 months or 6 months, and they're generally outlook on economy. So oil is just a small part of it, but there are agencies that every single day put out a report, and they have a more nuanced understanding of oil markets because they live only that sector on a daily basis. The World Bank would look at more a macro kind of position. So you would not go to a World Bank economic outlook report if you want to have a nuanced position on the oil and gas markets for the next week, for the next month, for the next quarter, for the next year. You will go to people who are paid every day to do these forecasts, and they will do it. They will do simulations. They say, if this were to happen, then this would be the volume produced. This is how much we have in inventory, global inventory, etc. So that's why I will not go to the World Bank Economic Outlook report to try to predict oil prices in the future.
Safely say that we won't be affected at all?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I would not go there. But from my own reading of the market, that's why I told you that the prices will sustain, will be such way into the future that allows us to have a sustainable industry. Okay? So that we not left stranded with these assets. That's the first point. That before those prices fall below a point where we can't produce oil anymore, lots of other countries, should there be a reduction in global demand, would fall off the production chart ahead of us. And so that means the market would be there longer for us because of our lower cost of production and better quality crude. So that's what I'm saying. These answers are a bit more complex than yes, no answers. I know Glenn Lal sitting there waiting for yes, no. Tomorrow he'll try to change the headline, but it's more nuanced. So I'm giving you options. I'm telling you what could happen. I can't predict way into the future, but I can say that from all that I know, the world is not decarbonizing at the rate at which it should decarbonize. So what happens if you had seen a massive investment? You need $2 trillion now to invest in renewable energy to offset the delta, which is the incremental increase in demand. So $2 trillion just to displace future demand for energy. And that's not happening now. So that means you have to meet current demand and future demand, guess from where? Fossil fuel. Because if you're not displacing it by investments in renewable, people are not going to stop needing that. So Africa is not going to keep its people, 600 million people, without power or electricity forever to meet a global target. They will invest whatever form. Fossil fuel, they're getting gas now. I'm encouraging them to use their gas. Because you think that we have to save Europe and the rest of the world, and our people there would not have even power or can't use the gas, cheap gas. So we've been in the coalition we have with Africa and others, like we work with these countries, we also coordinate our positions. We support each other. These are for the newly emerging producers. And you had a group of northern NGOs and a group of northern countries that were saying, you must leave your gas in the ground. We are expanding our production in our country, but you must leave yours in the ground. If our banks will not finance investments in your country for fossil fuel, but they will finance in our own countries, that's not fair. And that's why we take these positions. So it's much more, as I said before, for want of a better word, nuanced than straightforward.
Sir, there have been a lot of talks surrounding renewables and transition into cleaner energy. With increasing reliance on renewables and electric vehicles globally, has your administration reevaluated the potential risk of focusing solely on long-term oil revenues? And can you say what alternative revenue strategies are being considered?
I think that I just answered that question. I didn't get what's the new component of it.
What alternate revenue strategies would be considered? Keeping in that in context.
That's what I'm saying. I just explained that we believe that the revenue flow
From the oil and gas sector, if invested wisely, would create a new streams of benefit that would allow us to have prosperity beyond the oil and gas presence in Guyana or production, long beyond, whenever that happens. So what are these things? The investment in adaptation. So we don't get flooded out, we don't lose 80% of our GDP in a flood, etc. You have to invest in that to keep our people, our capacity to manage water. We have a plan for that. I've explained it here before. I'm not going to go through that again. How many pump stations, how many cokers we're rehabilitating, etc. That's one. Two, how do we generate new economic growth poles that will generate jobs and wealth, additional revenue for the state of Guyana that could, in the long run, even if oil revenue starts dipping, can come in and fill the gap. So the service economy is growing. Right now, in this year's budget, we have more non-oil revenue than oil revenue in this year's budget, financing the budget, more than from the non-oil sector. So agriculture in expansion, and all of the agriculture industry, the hospitality industry, the new growth pole with Brazil, that is the connection with Brazil, deep water port, Guyana becoming the transshipment point for goods into the Caribbean and everywhere else by bringing the goods in bulk here and then like a mini Panama, but allowing the entire northern Brazil to be able to access the Atlantic in a few hours. And you see a series of investments being made already, 45 of the bridges being built on the corridor between Linden and the border with Brazil, the bridge across Linden, and that project we're working on now. So that's a whole new growth pole that would generate thousands of jobs and bring significant additional revenue. The green sector is bringing in quite a bit of money to us. Biodiversity credits, carbon credits, etc. So in the future, so ecotourism, major focus on ecotourism in the future. So these are all sectors we believe And we're investing in that in the future that could do that to bring in revenue that we may lose from future changes in the fossil fuel sector.
Finally, from me, Dr. Jagdeo, 2 weeks ago, we asked if Hammerhead would have improved benefits to the Guyanese people, and you gave, and you explained the situation to us. However, could you clarify specifically if there will be any improved fiscal benefits to the country should that project and others be approved?
Which one? Which one is this?
The 7 project and beyond.
Oh, but right now we're not considering that. I don't want to be premature. We have not received the full application from Exxon. And when that application comes in sometimes next year, we'll review it and then I'll let you know. Okay, so my position is still the same. We haven't received an application as yet, and we will deal with it at that time. So let me just give you some numbers that I came upon a couple of days ago. So you know the gas to energy project. We have to pay, like per annum, we'd have to pay about $100 million to cover the capital costs on the pipeline, and then to amortize the loan on the power plant and the NGL facility and the transmission lines. So payback for about $100 million per year, we'd have to look at that. If we sell the NGL at the import price, FOB price, that is the liquids we get from the project. At current price, it will cover all of it. So just selling the liquids we have. So what does this mean? That is at the FOB price for, if we use that price for the liquids like the cooking gas and everything that we import, so you look at the price multiplied by the volume, it gives us about 106 million per year. So that means we can cover the entire payment. So the cost to the Guyanese taxpayers is zero. For generating power is zero. We're getting the power practically for free because we're paying back for the whole project from the sale of the NGL, that is the liquids that we're getting when we clean the gas to go to the power plant. If we utilize the retail price at which that gas, like the cooking gas, is sold to people, and we multiply the retail price times the volume, we're over 250 million US. We can repay the whole project from that alone if we sell it. Of course, we're not going to sell it at the current price. But if we use the economics there, in 8 years or so, we'll be able to amortize the entire project without a cent coming from the Treasury. This is a super project, a phenomenal project, because remember, we're getting the gas for free. So it is a phenomenal project for Guyana. And we already said to people, just from the lowering of the cost of electricity, the consumers will save $250 million too. When these numbers are shocking to me, and I'm an economist, and so then you see how feasible a project of this nature is. So they talk a lot about, oh, the project gonna finish now, 2 months delay, we were for it, we're against it, etc. They just don't know how transformative and how good a project it will be for Guyanese. Let's go ahead.
Milton Granum for Starbuck News. Has the deal been inked with any of the bidders for the additional supply of electricity as the Christmas season is approaching?
Oh, okay. So right now, the only one that went to the cabinet, I think it went to the cabinet, the same company that came in, the power ship. That is the only one, because the rest were for supply of equipment, which will take a long time to establish. All the other bids were not for sale of power, but they had to come and establish a plant. So that has been settled. I think it's gone to the cabinet today, and they would sign up. They have to build 5 kilometers of transmission main. So that project has started. And it should be completed in 6 weeks. The material often is not here in the country, so they're using some spare material that we're borrowing now. Because, to procure a lot of the material, the transformers, the poles, these are concrete poles and stuff, they take time. So they're building at least 5 kilometers of transmission main. We're hoping in 6 weeks' time. It may take a month to get the power ship in, a month to 6 weeks to get the power ship in. And so we're hoping still before Christmas, the power ship could be here and turn on. But that will be major. It will be 60 megawatts into the system. And then possibility when we build another piece of transmission main, 75 megawatts. So that will be for 2 years too, like the 36 in Berbice is for 2 years. So that will take us just beyond the period when the new plant comes into stream. If that happens, we'd be able to take down some of these old things that are running full out and do the maintenance. And hopefully that will bring major relief. So yes, that is moving forward. The contract has been awarded to do the transmission mains already. And also the contract, hopefully today, would have gone to cabinet to move the negotiations, to complete the negotiations with the power ship.
And what would be the cost per megawatt?
The bids came in at 11.17 cents per kilowatt hour, which was high. So it would be substantially reduced because it was lowered, I think, to about 9.5 cents per kilowatt hour. From the bid came in at 11.1. But the power plant has spare capacity. The power ship has spare capacity. So in case we need more, they will be able to get that. That is. So it costs us we're selling power now at about 22 to 23 US cents per kilowatt hour. If this comes in at 9.5, and they told me that the cost of the fuel is about 13 cents per kilowatt hour, US cents. So that takes us to about 22.5 cents per kilowatt hour for the cost. So that's where we are.
For the Chronicle, over the next few...
by the way, Stabrook had something. I spoke with Stacia about the report that he told me that by tomorrow they're finalizing the second audit. He's going to finalize the second audit because I promised to check. Marcel had asked me a question last week, and I told her I'm going to check it this week and get back to her. So he told me by tomorrow he's finalizing that report. So once the report is finalized, then we can move forward from there. Let's go ahead.
Over the next few days, we'll see over 3,500 persons graduating from UG. How important is this continuous increase in tertiary graduates to the nation's economy? And are you confident that they will be observed quickly into the job market?
Yeah, so absorption into the job market is something that can happen at a rapid pace or can take a while, depending on what you study. So that's why when people choose what they study, what courses they opt for, they have to also do so with a view of the job market. So a country does not need 200 sociologists. If you have 50 good sociologists working, that's good. So if you have 200 to 300 persons graduating in sociology, then they're less. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I don't want to say anything about what people study. I'm not judging. I'm just talking about the job market, because ultimately people have to decide, and we're happy that people are studying whatever subject they study. But I just want to make it clear that if you study, on the other hand, engineering or, say, financial management or accountancy, the people are hunting you down now to work. People need that immediately. So you can come, even before you completed your degree, you're marketable and at fairly higher rates. If you do say that, you may take a while, because those people tend to want to work with government mostly, because the private companies don't hire too many people. But at government levels too, we're already in many places saturated in the ministries. So that's why people have to look at what they study. And we've been encouraging people to study the areas that are more marketable. But we'd have to find ways of getting people engaged. Okay? And that's it? Okay, then thank you. Thank you very much.